just want to say welcome, everyone. Thank you for those of you that are joining me during Thanksgiving week. I know that there are a lot of people out and already enjoying the holiday season, and I wish them the best. So we're going to go ahead and get started right away. And if we end early, we end early. Today, I'm going to start with Shannon Etz. And Shannon Etz is here to share just a little bit of information about Student of the Month at the State Board of Education, because she is looking for some of the more distant and rural communities to share their wonderful students. So Shannon, if you want to present, you can. And if you want to start speaking now, it is your time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I presented to the Arizona Rural Schools Association last week, and Superintendent Turner invited me to come join you guys. Like she said, my name is Shannon. I work for the State Board of Education as Director of Constituent Services, which is a weird title to say. I wear a lot of weird, funny hats, but one of them is our Student of the Month program. Let's see if my slides will advance for me or not. There we go. We started back in October of last year, and at each of our board meetings, we get to recognize 2 K through 12 students. It's been super fun for our board members and for the public. It is the part of our work that our board members have told my boss that if he stops doing, he won't have a job anymore because everyone loves it so much. So we do have a form used to nominate students. It's available on our website, and I'll share the link a little bit further in. But when a student is selected, they're invited to our board meeting. They can attend either in person or virtually. They get to speak to the board. We give them a plaque, and then we take photos with their family, their nominator, anyone that comes to support them. So it's just been really fun. We get to hear incredible stories about students in Arizona, their accomplishments, what they're looking forward to in the future. Our front desk receptionist cries every month with them because they're just so amazing. And so we accept nominations in a lot of different categories. It can be their character, personal qualities, any specific achievements they've had, the impact they have on a community or their school, civic engagement, maybe they've started a business. Really, we know that kids are exceptional in a lot of different ways, so we're really open to however they're being recognized. This is who we've recognized so far since we started last year. We do have mostly districts so far, a good number of charters, and then we kind of shuffle in some other kiddos that might be in ESA or a private school, or they're being homeschooled. And then on our counties, we have mostly Maricopa County, but we have started to get some of our smaller, more rural counties. And that's kind of where I'm focusing in and trying to reach out to a lot of different folks. Our goal is by about this time next year, we'd like to have pulled a student from every county. That's been an important priority for our board members and for our staff, just making sure that we are reflecting the state as a whole with this program. So far this year, we're about 50% district, 38% charter schools, and 13% are homeschool kiddos. And this includes through December, this board meeting, we've got kiddos coming from Greenlee, Maricopa, Mojave, Navajo, Yavapai, and Yuma counties. But part of why I'm here to chat with you all is currently we have very few or no nominations from these counties. And Kristin invited me to come speak, hoping that I might be able to reach some folks in these counties. These are kind of where we're targeting because we can't hit our goal of pulling from every county if I don't have nominations from every county. So that's kind of where we're focusing. And of course, we're still taking nominations from everywhere else as well. And we pull those kids in as we're able to. And then this is how you actually go ahead and nominate. We do have the link up on our website on our Students of the Month page, and you can read descriptions of past students we've recognized. This QR code is also live as well. And I'll share this presentation out to Kristin, and she can pass it all on to everyone as well. And then just a couple of reminders as you're thinking about this, we do use the information we receive in nominations to select students. So it's really helpful if you can expand on why a student is great or what achievement they've had. That just helps give us a little bit more information to use to pick a student. And then we also use that to introduce the student at our board meeting and to create their description on our website page. So that's just really helpful to have. But any questions at this point? Go ahead and stop sharing.
All right. I don't see any messages in the chat, and I don't see anyone unmuting or raising their hand, but I will be very happy to share that presentation and a follow-up email to everyone, including those that are going to be watching the recording. And hopefully we can get students from every county to the SBE.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'll send that over shortly. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. This is one of my favorite parts about my job is talking about cool kids in Arizona. So happy to chat if you have any questions or anything like that. But thank you guys so much for letting me join.
Thank you, Shannon. We really appreciate it.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you. All right, next, we're going to move right along. And we are very excited, or at least I'm very excited, to have Sharka White here. She is going to be presenting on the new ESCA programmatic monitoring cycle. Sorry about that. And she is focusing it on the single site LEA component for all of us in this meeting. So it's going to be very tailored to what we do as district leaders. And I'm going to say, Sharka, go ahead and please take it away.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So I just have to let you know, if anything happens, the gods are not with me. I'm at a school site down in Tucson. We're doing monitoring actually right now. And so if there's a problem, because I'm kind of working out of a couple of different places, please holler if you can no longer see something or hear something, because my screen is doing some pretty wonky things. So hopefully this will work out for us. Let me share my screen quick. All right, I'm gonna check to see if we've got a thumbs up, if you can see my screen.
We can see your screen.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Is it actually a PowerPoint ability, a way to see all of you? The way that Google works, can you see the actual presentation, or does it just look like PowerPoint?
It looks like the PowerPoint. So we're seeing the slides on the side as well.
Oh, you are seeing the slides on the side as well. Ooh, that is not what I want. Okay. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as you can see everything, because it is not letting me present the way that I need to present. So we're going to proceed for sake of time. So a couple of things. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to share our new monitoring, but also here to describe what the shifts are and why we did need to make them. Additionally, what enhancements we made to support our single site LEAs across the state. But in addition to that, really supporting all schools and districts to really reflect what is actually happening in schools. And then I'm going to pause at the end to take questions or to add clarifications and kind of explain the longer part of the process. And I'm at your disposal for as long as you need me today. So,
and Sharka, when you took down the presentation, we can't see it anymore.
Really? Wow. It's can you not see it now? Because it still says I'm sharing.
Nope, we cannot see it now.
Okay, well, let's try this again. I'll blame it on my ability to use technology. Let's just put it that way. All right, can you see now? Nothing?
Yes, it's
okay.
Taking over right now.
Okay. Whew.
We are good.
All right, perfect. Okay, great. So the things we're going to cover today, I'm going to talk about what are the largest changes that were needed and why we actually had to make them, because that is super important for everybody to understand the landscape. I'm going to describe what the program components are, and then the structure, and then the responsibilities, but we'll talk through like what that actually means for a single site LEA. And what you guys can look forward to when you actually have to go through the monitoring process, and what supports our department will be giving for everybody, but specifically smaller sites through the monitoring process. All right. So why do we actually need to make these shifts? Well, first and foremost, the shifts need to be made partly because when we go through processes just like school improvement, you realize things aren't working. And possibly some people on this call, but definitely people from around the state let us know loud and clear that we were not meeting the needs of LEAs. We were being extremely burdensome. Our monitoring process did not yield better programs. I think that's probably the headline, right? And then there's all that feedback that comes into that. But additionally, yeah, we had audit findings. So there were audit findings that actually told us where we needed to be stronger. We also worked with our federal partners to give us some guidance on what areas were good within our program, but where should we be heading with monitoring? And then the other part was when I did take over, as with all leaders of schools, you go through all your programs frequently to say, are they living their purpose? And are we doing right by kids? And so all of those things together informed us on what our big rocks were. And heavily leaning on, you must correct the audit findings, right? But the other parts are, you really need to make sure that you do right by kids in schools. And so what the big shifts are that had to happen, that came out of all of those buckets are, we have to make sure that whatever program we have, 100% of our LEAs are monitored equitably annually. So you will see some of the things I will talk about go directly to that. We are a unique state in how our programs have unfolded. And so there are some pieces that we had to correct due to that. The other one is 100% of our LEAs have to be monitored in person more frequently. So this comes back to, we can do no good with programs if we are not working alongside our partners. And this is one that I will say not only came out of auditing, but guidance, but was overwhelming in the field. We did have people that had not had people in their buildings. And I think this is really pertinent to rural and small LEAs, because if we don't see the work and we're not in schools working alongside you, every change we make is not informed by impact on what it does to our small schools. And, there's a lot of things that challenge single site LEAs that also, challenge people from depending on the populations that they serve or the regions of the state that they're in. And sometimes our programs do not take those things into account. And if we are not actually seeing things firsthand and working alongside you, then we do not get the best information. And so that was kind of out of those pieces. And then one that's really important is that a monitoring program is supposed to be supportive. And it is supposed to look at effectiveness, right? So there has to be this component of it has to be 100% that all of the requirements are monitored. But they have to be monitored in a supportive way, not just a punitive way and not just a checkbox way. So that informs the changes that you will see and our intent behind our process. I think that's the biggest piece, is that it's really about the intent and the way that my team will move in the field. So I will talk more about that, because that's going to be the biggest thing that at the end of this, when I say we are going to be asking you your feedback, this is the biggest one that I'm looking for when we think about it. Is the process supportive? Do you come out stronger in the end? And are we working alongside you is going to be the big key. So those are going to be the pieces that as I talk through this, that's the lens that I would like to have you look at. And then that's the feedback that we're really seeking. And then the other component that we had that we were completely missing is that throughout our monitoring, and this is not just my department, this is somewhat agency-wide, we were not either gathering data from LEAs to inform us and other departments on actions that are needed across the field. So one of the pieces with monitoring that should happen is that we should be gathering data to help us move forward and realize what support is actually needed, where are we strong, but honestly, what we should be doing as an agency in a department. And we were not gathering data as such. So I'll talk to that a little bit. Additionally, there needs to be equity in the process. This is the big thing, that when a monitoring program is built, it should be reflexive and responsive to the composite of the landscape of needs. Our old program, or components of it, did not do that. So irregardless of whether or not you were a single site LEA or a big, huge LEA, whether you were a district, rural, it didn't matter. Everybody was put basically in the same box. And there was no way to tailor things and still meet the intent of monitoring. So hopefully, as you will see through what I shared today, but also if you do experience it this year, all the way through, you will see that live in action. And then one that we are working on, and this is the one that I will say is actually a couple year process. And I'm not sure if I have anybody on this call that this really pertains to, but this one is that all LEAs are treated as unique entities. So this one really is a strong focus for our charter schools because of the unique relationships that they have with what are called charter management organizations. And so when you have LEAs that are single LEAs, but they group together in a way to work together, the intent is that actually every single LEA, by definition, must be treated as a unique entity, and we cannot push them together or tear them apart in weird ways. Our process must treat everybody in the same fashion. That is a pretty big lift nationally, actually. That is a big audit finding, and actually a couple of, I don't want to say ACLU, but I do not remember the group. So I will just say that is actually a national problem, but is prevalent in Arizona as well. And so I will loosely talk to that. But if there is anybody on the call that really would like more information on exactly what that looks like, I will absolutely share more if it is needed. So when we think about what the shifts are and why, so the big major shifts that you will see with the biggest piece, and all of you have been now told which cycle you are in, which is really which group, right? Some people have already contacted the department. They're like, well, why was I in 6, but now I'm in 2, or so on. That goes back to that levelization, where when we have to do equity across the process, we actually had to be in schools more. It caused us to do a couple of things, which was reduce our cycles, if we're going to keep cycles, which we did, so that the field understands that and knows that. And so we kept it. So instead of 6 cycles, there are 4. And so in order to do that, we had to realign all LEAs accordingly. But I want you to throw out of your brain what you knew about programmatic monitoring, and realize that honestly, the cycle doesn't really matter. It's about the work that's in those and why we're doing things, which I'll explain. And then the other one is, when you look at a program assignment, it does have to be set on a criteria. I did put on the presentation a risk criteria because people understand that, but it's really not risk. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I termed it with my team, it's actually a need criteria. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But when you are being monitored, there is an element that is based on the need of your LEA and district and what that looks like. So we do have LEAs that could have certain parts that they are monitored on over the course of multiple years, because that's an area that we're intensively working with them on to help them grow. And there's a variety of factors that go into that. Some are whether or not they do have some risk factors that are by the state. Either they're struggling with funds, they're struggling with other grants. Maybe they've actually had to be on corrective action. But additionally, it could be, let's say that they have a large shift in population. Maybe they have a large turnover or have a brand new leadership team, like business manager and superintendent and new principal, right? That's a different level of support that is needed. And once we know that, our stuff needs to change to support that LEA. And so also LEA request. Believe it or not, we do have a lot of LEAs that request us to be more present or add components to our monitoring program to ensure that they are supported in a full way. And so our base program and methodology didn't account for that before, but it does account for that now. So those are the big, major shifts that are happening in foundational structures that you will see. The other piece that is super important when we talk about the 4 cycles is what you used to see in our programmatic monitoring was cycle 1 was typically on a very specific set of things, and then nobody touched it for like 6 or 7 years. And then cycle 2 was typically Title 2, and cycle 3 was typically Title 3. But one of the feedbacks that we got, not only from the field, but from our federal partners, is that when you monitor, you actually monitor over time, and all of our programs are connected in some way. It's not just a Title I program or a Title II program. They all funnel into the ESEA and school program. So what you will see when we talk about this, you will actually see major themes that run throughout all of these cycles so that they make sense. So when we are asking for a portion of information where we're diving deeper into a specific aspect of your program and monitoring, we're checking that one aspect, but the next cycle next year, we'll actually be checking a different aspect of the program. And it might be very similar or have nuances from the cycle before, but that's where we're actually looking for change and growth over time. So that is one of the biggest pieces when we're thinking about our cycles and what that looks like. What I can say is also as a component of this, which you will remember as part of monitoring in the past, cycle 4 was the big on-site monitoring, where usually if you got to cycle 4, it was this big, huge process. And then you come out and you take a look at everything. And it was not friendly really on either parts, and not always conducive to actually what's happening in a building. We were requiring things in specific ways and all of the pieces, and it made it really difficult for LEAs. That was the number one thing that when we received feedback from the field, but also from our federal partners, that's actually when you're looking at doing things over time, that's actually not correct. So what we have now is we have a representative piece. I'm going to show this next slide. It's a beefy slide, so pardon me. But my computer's a little sluggish. Okay, so when we're thinking about programmatic monitoring, each of the cycles has 2 parts, and you may or may not have to do 1 or 2 parts. So this is where go back to, it's got to be a representative sample. It has to be based on need and all of the things. Okay, so for this, you can see the 4 cycles. You can also see kind of the landscape of how many LEAs or schools are represented in each of the cycles. One of the things that as we shifted that we did have because of our wonderful landscape is that before in our 6 cycles, we had some cycles that were 90% LEA and 10% charter. And then we had some cycles that were like 85 to 90% charter and not LEA. So that creates a problem when we're thinking about equity over time. And then when we think about monitoring, you must monitor all things in a unified fashion. So we cannot have disjointed pieces like that. Additionally, we had some parts where just because the way things fell before and the way that charters and districts change and grow and unify and don't unify, we actually had some pieces where depending on the cycle, we actually saw no schools on certain sides of the state. We had some cycles that had 0 rural schools in them, which means as a department, we were not monitoring aspects across the state in a way that is required. So we had to actually right set everything and then create a methodology that allows for those shifts. I think SPED, did this about 5 years ago. We just had not made the shift. And so this is why you will see some of those bigger nuances of change, but our methodology will allow us to ensure that we are doing things as a state functionally, compliantly, but also that we are representative and actually being out in the field and being in schools and actually assisting schools on everything, regardless of the change, all over the state every year. So I think that's a huge benefit, especially as we're thinking about how I go back to the stuff we're doing in monitoring and the data that we're gathering must inform us of what we are doing next. And if we are not ever in one whole side of the state, that means we never get to see or have a voice or have those schools give us a voice on any of the things that we do annually. And that's a big, huge issue. And so there are two parts, as I'm going to go back to. You've got the desktop monitoring and you've got on-site monitoring. So at any given time, we will have in cycle 1, 2, 3, and 4, we will have LEAs that have to do desktop, but there will be a selection of LEAs annually that will also go through what's called an on-site. So I will talk about the requirements of each and what that means for a single site LEA. But you can see kind of the lay of the land there. So, we have about 480, and it's actually 600 and some, but at the time this slide was made, some of those pieces, we were teasing some of those things out. And then we have about 159 actually on-site visits now that we're going to do this year, and then impacting about 520 schools. So when we think about monitoring, one of the other components of monitoring, when I talk about how we've teased things together. So our team went back actually to the roots when we built this program, and they actually tore out each of the statutes, just like you tear out a standard, to figure out like, what does it mean and what does it mean to monitor and what is the actual requirement for the LEA. So as we went through and looked at everything for ESSA, every bit of it, there are actually only 16 things. If you think about the buckets and the main requirements that the state should be monitoring LEAs on. And that means that when we think about monitoring, it's helping LEAs grow. That is vastly different than what our previous program was. Our previous program had a lot of pieces that when we think about state and federal requirement, there were those, but there were also the things that were just at the whim of the department, just because the department wanted to do it, or whoever happened to be in leadership wanted to do it. But that flies in the face of what a monitoring program is, and really the charge from what I will say is our current administration, but also my leadership and also the direction of the federal government is that it should be rooted in what is required, but what is supportive. And you've got to remove burden. So when we think about that, I'll talk about what that lives out when we think about when we talk about the responsibilities of LEAs. But there are 16 pieces that we will monitor over time. And in the handbook and in the training, you'll be able to see each one of those components and be able to read them. So like the one that I actually show is the LEA must develop, review, and revise a plan to utilize ESSA funding in consultation with stakeholders in coordination with other programs. So that's a requirement. And then we must monitor that, but we also have a charge to help LEAs get stronger in that work. Right. And so when you look at things that we ask for at the state level, it must be meaningful and it must be real. OK. So after we made these 16 and this whole process, I do want to say we worked with our committee of practitioners, which are 30 different member districts and people from the field, which include teachers, community members, private schools, charter schools, district schools, and so on to help us throughout this full process. And so they helped not only develop these main requirements, but they also built the monitoring program. ADE did not assign the cycle main requirements. That was purely done by members of the field that worked together to say, okay, what does that physically look like for us? Like, here's the 16 things, but we want to put them together as that they make sense. And we want to make it to be stuff that we already do or that we should do, not something that we must create for ADE in any shape or form. It's the stuff that should be in schools all the time. So here's where you can kind of see each of the 16 requirements are grouped in those 4 cycles. And there is a relationship throughout those 4 cycles that when we're looking at a program, we are actually looking at components of that program over time based on the requirements of each of those programs. And so I know that doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but as you experience it and look at it, you'll be able to see how instead of just looking at something one time, like your postings for homeless once in a 4-year or 7-year period of time, we're actually looking for elements of your program throughout each of those cycles to lean in at any given time on a specific piece, so that we're also looking at those programs across the board annually. So when we think about these components and we think about all of the pieces, really, what does that mean for you when we think about, well, what do I now have to do, right? You're telling me an awful lot about requirements, and you're telling me an awful lot. I've got a desktop, and I might have an on-site. So what does that physically look like when I have to do the work, and what do I have to show ADE? So here's just a small snippet of what that actually looks like. So as each of the requirements, you can see where they live. We clearly spell it out to you where you will see it and what you have to do within it. There are some static ways that we gather information. Sometimes it's an upload where we actually need to see a document. In some cases, we just need you to explain it to us in some detail. And I'll explain more about that. And then there's another one where there's a rubric and a rating scale, where based on a set of criteria, you have to rate things, and then there's data behind it, right? And so you can clearly see, we outline it for you, that you can see exactly what the requirement is and the way that you have to show in each and every cycle for each and every requirement. And that is for desktop monitoring, but also can apply for on-site monitoring as well. But I will say, for on-site monitoring, we do not ask for any form submissions, and we do not ask for any rubrics. It's just an upload of materials that we will work together on, and what we will see when we actually will be there. So additionally, when we think about, well, what does that look like for me as an LEA? I need to kind of have an idea of what this looks like. And so we also built a document just to help inform and support LEAs. And here's another one that you can see that this one's main requirement 3. And when I did not talk about the umbrellas and the other pieces of kind of the overarching methodology behind our program, but you can see where it clearly states on the left-hand side there, the statutory requirements and citations, so that you can see, like, what funds does it belong to, where are the statutes that this is coming from, so that you can also see how many in one requirement all of those components are monitored. That is very different from our last program. Our last program had each of these citations. You would have a submission over the course of time for each one of these, going back to the same requirement. What we are asking LEAs to do now is look at the stuff that they're doing and pick out the most important parts of what you do that show, like in this case, it's a transition plan. What are the things that you do in your district? What is the evidence that you have that fits all of these statutes, but basically that you're going to show us that you have a transition plan that including program to program, but meets all of these requirements. We're not asking you to upload the plan necessarily. We're not asking you just to upload. We're asking you to upload what you have. And there's some other pieces. There's some guiding questions. There's some evidence that if you have it, that you can, if you want to upload those types of items, those could be helpful. But then there's other supportive links that if you need to learn more, because honestly, if you don't have something for a requirement, the first time probably ever, we're asking you, don't build it. Just tell us you don't have it. It's okay. And we are actually finding, the reason I put this one in here is because we're running the pilot right now. Of our 8 districts that we are running this program through, only 1 had this. The rest of them didn't. They do things, but they don't have a program or a plan. And so what we've asked LEAs to do is just be honest with us about where they are. And if it is something that you don't have, we're asking you to call it out for us and tell us, actually, I don't have a transition plan, or whatever requirement it would be, so that we can then help say, okay, so what does that look like and what is the barrier? And it could be a variety of factors, but we're actually asking the why behind it, so that we can help with the process. And so I'm using this one as an example because I suspected that we would probably have some growth areas as a state. I was not suspecting that 100% of our LEAs, including large LEAs, actually don't have a plan. But they didn't know they needed a plan. and we've never supported them in making plans. They do things, right? But there's no cohesive plan across the way. Additionally, the other one that we have found is when we're looking at some McKinney-Vento stuff, we actually found one LEA, but the 6 neighboring small rural LEAs that did not have a program and did not know that they needed to. And so we are able to, at that point, help them move forward, with whatever they need to do so that they can build programs and then support them along the way. But it is providing us a lot of information on the landscape, because we've never asked those questions of LEAs, and they didn't even know that there was something that they needed to do, because all we ask is postings. And so if they did not get another set of funds, they would have no idea of what their requirements were, or that they even needed to have some things in place. And so at least we're able to help provide service. But this is one of the supports that we have that will help. But the biggest piece is, if there's something that isn't in place, or you actually do not know how to provide information to us to tell us your story, you just work with us alongside so that we can meet the requirement or put something in place or help you. And I think that's one of the biggest things that is a big shift, because it's not been something that we've done before. And through this process, it's really not about a pass or fail. It's about gathering information and having next steps so that we can partner moving forward. And we're just asking for a lot of transparency and trust ultimately. But my team is learning what that looks like when we're coming to LEAs to really partner with them to build highly effective programs. And one of the other components when we're looking at this, I want to go back, and I'll go back to this one a little bit. So when you have a desktop visit, there are some pieces that aren't going to change. So as you think about these requirements now, there are going to be tasks still in EMAC, and you've all kind of got that notification already about, hey, this is what that physically looks like. There is a new component. Everybody has to take training. One of the big pieces for that is that did come out of a variety of pieces of feedback that we need to train the field better and make sure that every LEA actually understands what's expected of them and how to do it so that it doesn't become a barrier in their success. So this year, as a first step, we did put together some trainings that we are asking LEAs to complete. And then from that, and then getting feedback from the field, we will do more throughout time. But in EMAC, you will have a series of tasks that you will have to do. And if I go back to the previous slide that kind of says if you had 4 things, and let's say I'll make believe and I'll say that, because you can see it on the screen, main requirements 4 and 5 live in multiple cycles. There will be things that you will need to do in cycle 1. So let's say that there's a form response. Cycle 2, cycle 3, and cycle 4 actually are different form responses for that same requirement, because not only are we gathering data, but we want to see your program over time. And we need to see different aspects so that we can see the full program. And so what you will see is when you get into EMAC, there will be things you will need to upload, but it's not going to be all of the things that you used to do. It's not going to be, there are going to be some of that. Like we will still need to see postings because that's a legal requirement, but there will be some things that it's like you get to choose what tells your story. If that's a presentation, it's a presentation. If that's you have a couple of dojo posts and you have a video of a meeting, and that's the information that you want to share with the department to show that that's what you do, then that's what you give us. And then we have a dialogue about it. It's no longer you have to give us this exact item, and if you don't have it, then you need to create it for us. Now, when we think about on-site, this is what I'm actually doing today. And so these components are a little bit different. And so I want to kind of talk through that because I think that's been giving not only my team the greatest amount of stress, but I think members of the field, like what does that physically look like? And how does this look? And I think for this, I think this is the most important piece because what you may remember if you've ever had an on-site as a small or a single site LEA, sometimes they can be like way overwhelming. and a whole bunch of things that you need to do ahead of time. So I can tell you that we're running a pilot right now with 8 schools, and I told Kristin this morning that there's at least 1 or 2 members that normally probably attend that actually served in our on-sites. And so we did have single site LEAs at one today. We had rural LEAs on the reservation out in the middle of nowhere, people that have new buildings, not new buildings, big LEAs, you name it. We had it in our pilot for a couple of reasons. One, my team needs to see things so that they know what to do so we can norm and give quality service. But also, being part of our pilot, we asked these LEAs to go through the process with us and then pick it apart. I asked them and sat down with each of them to talk to me very specifically about their experience and what we should consider. And then as we go through it and as we go through the follow-up pieces and everything else, they will heavily inform us and talk to us about, what it feels like and looks like. However, although that helped us refine things before we do our big launch, we are going to ask that same thing of all LEs this year. And so this is where I am going to make the biggest plea of my life to you, is that as you go through this process, if you are chosen for an on-site or not, I really would love to have your feedback on the process. I mean, and it's the good, the bad, the uglies, right? Because we will not get stronger and serve you better if we do not truly hear your perspective. And I think that's the only way that we're truly going to get this right. And so please, 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 school leaders, district leaders, federal programs people, we really need to hear from you through the process so that we can make it better, because this is an iterative process. What you see now will not be what it looks like annually. And our report to the field is that we will respond based on the data that we have, so that we can get things right. So kind of back to an on-site visit, you will know your on-site visits well ahead of time. And so before you do your on-site visit, you have to do all your programmatic things in EMAC, but then 10 days before your visit, there are some pieces that we ask for evidence that you will give us. And that will allow us to look through some things. And then based on that, based on what we see in your LIAP, SIAP in GME, based on your grant budget and what you are doing right now, we will develop an on-site visit. So that is what is very different. So this is the part that I think is the best piece about it, is that based on what you are doing with your money and how you are tracking your goals and what you are facing as an LEA is how our site visit is going to roll out. It's not, it may be in a major bucket. Let's say it's going to be about your IAP and how you do your continuous improvement process and what does that physically look like and what data you use and how you work with your stakeholders. There's going to be that component. But if you say, I'm paying for a person and here's the benefit of that person, or I'm doing a special project. We did have an LEA talk to us about their house system and why their house system was so vital to multiple data points that they found in their IAP. That's what we're going to dive in and we're going to want to see. And we're going to want to see it for 2 things. And we're going to ask to see it. And you are going to build the schedule for ADE, not us. We don't tell you what that looks like. We want you to show us the great things that are happening on your campus in reality, in authenticity, not a dog and pony show, like just the real stuff. Right. And so this specific LEA, it was Valentine. If you don't know where Valentine's at, it's in Truxton in Mojave County, and they're up by the Wallapai Nation, just shortly outside of the reservation. And they've got a number of challenges, but they have some really good stuff. But they have a definite methodology of why they're doing what they're doing. And we wanted to see it. We wanted to see, why is that working for them? Is it working for them? Is it something we can leverage for other districts? But also, how can we help make it stronger in the areas that they need? And so that all happens in our review of your submission stuff, and then our dialogue with you saying, well, what is it that we need to see and why? And so your program specialist will help build what that looks like, and then you will be the driver in that. You will need to give it to us 5 days ahead of time, and then we're going to come do it. And when we come on the onsite, there is an element where you get to tell your story. You get to talk to us. There will be questions throughout. And then we will go around your school and see the great things. Then I think in the documents, you've all seen the rubrics as well of what that looks like. We will come out with the areas where you're really, really strong and we think you can leverage, and then collectively kind of come up with what are the barriers and what are the grow areas that, we've identified and that you will help us identify, and where is it that the ADE will assist. And I think that's the key point. We're not off the hook in any of this. So when we think about monitoring in the past, a lot of it is, no, you need to do this and it needs to be done by a certain day, blah, 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 blah. That's not the goal of this monitoring. The goal of monitoring is to gather information on the great things that are happening, but work alongside you to solve problems. And what that means is we have to be a partner in that. We may not be able to do everything, but we do have skin in the game, and my team clearly understands that. And we will work extremely hard to do that, because your kids can't win if we don't get this right. And so then after we do that and we kind of come to those pieces, about 3 days after the visit, there will be a feedback meeting that'll be virtual, where we'll come together and share information and then talk about some next steps. And then this wonderful piece at the end, if there's a corrective action, and the reason we have to build this is because it's possible, right? If there is something that is super egregious, that it falls well outside the scope of us just being able to help, meaning that it is a federal requirement that, we take immediate action, then that would be a 2-week process. I can say that I would suspect, based on everything that I know, that this should be extremely far and few between. And I don't have any leading indicators of data that would show that this would need to be enacted, but maybe a couple of times across the year. But it's definitely not the focus. But when we build a program, that is an element that must be part of the program in case there is something that we find that does require a corrective action to be put in place. And I think what I want to also show is this is a sample of a single site that we visited in Maricopa County. And it's a little bit harder to see, but you can kind of see the lay of the land and some pictures. Do not stress. ADE will not bring 10 people to you. You will see 10 people sitting around the table there, but that's part of the pilot. And the understanding from the pilot is that we did bring, because for me, not getting this right is not an option for your kids. And so I did take 10 people of my staff, my directors, and a core team of other people out to the field to norm with them. It's going to be a total of 10 times. So that I can ensure that the people that are leading this project understand and can do this at a high level. And then they will also work alongside the rest of our team, because I have 52 members on my team, that when they go out in the field, nobody goes out in the field, no team goes out in the field alone without being proficient. But also they have a quality person coaching them through the process for the entire year. But in order to do that, I needed to norm with my team first and practice this. And so normally it'll be a team of 2, maybe 3, depending on the need of the LEA. But usually a team of 2 will come out and work alongside your leadership for an on-site visit. You can see the sample schedule. This is about what it looks like or so, because we want to see great things. And so we're not going to just come for an hour and then say, see you. We want to see the great things that are happening. But I think for my team and for the agency as well, us living in schools makes us stronger and makes us much more, I think, valuable in the process of our decision making. And so the longer that we can see things in action and really live it alongside you, the better. And that is representative of how many site visits we do, but why we do the work we do, and then through the schedule. So the only piece that is not being hand-in-hand contact with actual staff and students is about an hour. And then we do ask for what I will call a presentation, for lack of a better term. But when we think about progress to goals, it's really thinking about the time that you can sit down with us and talk to us about how's it going so far. You made this plan, you submitted your funding, how's it working for you? How are you monitoring it? And what adjustments do you see that need to be made right now? Because if we think about it, our on-site 4 in cycle 4 last time and previously was all about stuff that was a year old. And that means nothing. You've got 180 days or so to fix things moving forward. And so if we look at things now, is that something that we can shift in your program to move the needle for kids even faster? Is there a way that we can partner, or that you are looking at innovation that's going to move your needle so that your kids achieve prior to year's end? So that's really the goal of what I'll call the presentation. It's not a big, huge lift. It's a few slides where basically you take all of your stuff and we want you to digest it into usable forms for us. We want the highest leverage pieces. And then if you're noticing a gap already, then you can just name it and let us know what you're planning on doing already. And then we can ask informative questions and then make suggestions of how we can partner through that presentation. And then the rest of it you can see. In this case, it's an example of someone's actual site where when we look at the budget, we look at their initiatives, there's certain things that we wanted to see. The LEA can also tell us, and in this case, there was one where the LEA physically told us, hey, we're actually struggling in this area. We're not seeing the data shifts that we want. We are paying for it out of Title I, but we would like you to come in and look at it and see if you see anything that we could shift so that we're more effective, because we're devoted to this. We just don't know what to do with it. Like, it's not netting us any gains, and we would really like to see how that looks. And so there is an element in this when we're there. If you have some of that, you absolutely ask our team to lean in. And if it's one, and this was the case, it was an area that my team didn't have expertise in. But since the LEA asked, there were people in the department that did. So I brought people from the department out so that we could provide assistance and really look at things with this LEA and then come out hopefully stronger. And with some good next steps for our department to support this LEA on a unique thing that they were experiencing that we kind of needed to problem solve through. And so then we come out and we do all of that, but you can kind of see the lay of the land where, some of it's interviews, some of it's checking on things. We do want to talk to staff. We want to talk to kids. We want to talk to you so that we can see, what that looks like. And in previous times, we didn't always get that chance, and it didn't always look that way. And, there were a lot of schools that were failing monitoring when really there was no reason for them to fail. We just weren't present enough to see. And it was kind of painting things in a box. And so that's really the goal of monitoring is to see what's happening along your own trajectory of growth. It's not about a pass or fail. It's like, where are you now and where are you headed? And if there's something that's completely absent, we help you put it into place, but really help you grow your programs from where you're at. All right, so I'm going to stop there because that is a huge mouthful. And I am going to stop sharing and take any questions, comments or questions, I guess.
Thank you so much for sharing. I see Deborah has a question, and then I'll follow up after Deborah's question. But Thank you.
I actually don't have a question, but I wanted to say thank you. That was very helpful, and I appreciate what you shared today.
Well, thank you.
I'm on cycle 1.
Sweet.
So my question is for the on-site monitoring. Listening to the equitability of having the LEA cycle through the monitoring, but there's only 4 cycles. So how often are we monitored? We wouldn't be monitored for the same cycle every time. I would think that it would shift around. So I'm kind of wondering
what that looks like for on-site.
Yeah, like I understand what it looks like this year, but what is it looking like in the years to come?
Yeah. So typically when you think about cycles, because we kept it that way because that's what our field knows. And actually for the department, it's a little bit easier to manage. So as you move through, there's this piece of randomization. So ultimately, if like your district is in cycle 1, and there's elements that when you do a cycle visit, there are elements that are in all of the on-sites because that's what our state focus is this year. But when we're monitoring a piece, let's say you get an on-site in cycle 1, but there's no other factors that show that you need more support. Then I'll leave it at that. More support would be then when you go into cycle 2, you should not, or most likely would not, have another on-site monitoring. And then again, every year we look at those risk factors, we look at those need factors. And if everything aligns, then chances are somewhere within that in the next 4 years, you will have another on-site monitoring. It is one that depending though, if we have a need, whether it's a state need, or whether it's an LEA need, or whether it's an LEA request, we can do them more frequently. And so there is a cause, though, in some cases, which we have had, and we've already had some conversations with some LEAs due to where they are, there might be a need to come on site annually for a period of 2 to 3 to 4 years. And those are going to be unique, but those are going to be done in complete transparency. Like the conversation with the LEA is going to be, we've got a plan and here's why we're doing it. And here's what it looks like for you. Because there is a piece where when we think about how when we're monitored at from the feds down to us, they look at how are you actually serving schools? And when you have a school of extreme high need, how are you supporting them? It's not just how you're governing them. It's how are you actually supporting them? And, an on-site visit as such as this is only one piece, but that doesn't mean that we can't come on site and work intensively, supportively with a district where we actually go and field with them. We take them to other districts, whatever it happens to look like is also a component of this program when they need it. But typically by and large, it's about once every 4 years instead of once every 6 to 8 years. We did have some LEAs, unfortunately, just due to some structural pieces that did not receive any monitoring at all and or on-site monitoring for 5 to 10 years. And so we did have to put some safeguards in place for that. But, if everything aligns and it's like there is no additional need, it would be about every 4 years-ish. And then any others? Ask the hard ones, really.
So I'll ask one more question, just because I have a few going around in my mind. So you said the focus is going to not necessarily be on last year, but what are you doing this year? So already if there and is an area that you're improving, you can already show the improvement for this year instead of just what happened last year?
Yeah, for sure. Because when you think about it, it's about, the 4 components are that we're really looking at this year. And part of this is our on-site is pretty strategic due to LEA need, but also state needs. So one of them is the IAP and the planning process, right? That is a big, huge piece. So on-sites do have a piece of that. Additionally, there's one with professional development. So when we think about how we're developing teachers, but how LEAs are developing teachers and where are the needs? And what are the barriers that they're having with developing a workforce? There's an element that I won't say out of touch, but kind of, because there's a piece where we're not in and we don't see it and we don't hear it, but we actually do not see the impact living on your campus. And we need to see that. Additionally, when we think about transition plans is another one that we are wanting to discuss about because we do know that that's an area of need, but we just don't know the enormity of the need. We also don't know exactly how to build support. And so unless we dive in a little bit and gather information on the realities and actually talk to people and start looking for partnerships in a mass kind of way, we're never going to help crack that box open. And so that is one that is a part of it, but there's a very specific reason why. And then the last one, I'm just to be completely transparent about, is McKinney-Vento. We are asking about McKinney-Vento this time. And I want to be very clear about the why behind that, because in monitoring, if you think about our old monitoring program for ESEA, we monitored a very small aspect, but if you were an HCY or an EHCY subgrantee, your experience with monitoring was very different. And so I do not know if that pertains to anybody on this call, but that department actually falls under my leadership as well. And I received extreme, overwhelming feedback from the field when I started with the department of how, for lack of better terms, invasive, oppressive, and overarching, like overwhelming that those requirements were when you were monitored. And so, but we were not monitoring all LEAs. And one of the findings that we had, and a gap for us, is that the McKinney-Vento actually does impact all schools that are public education agencies in the entire state of Arizona, not just the ones within title programs. We weren't doing that. But also, we didn't have any information on any LEA outside of subgrantees on what they do and what their programs look like, or where their successes or where their struggles are when it comes to homeless, foster care, and refugee students. And so we did add that just so that we can see. We are gathering data extremely quickly, and this is one that I did name earlier, was we found a rural district that absolutely had nothing in place because they didn't know they needed to. They just knew they had to do the postings because it was in the monitoring. They didn't have a liaison. Their liaison's never been trained. And unfortunately, now they have a student for the first time that they had just discovered, and they have no idea what to do. And so this is a huge opportunity for us to engage and support. And there's no other way we wouldn't have found them. They had no idea at the department that they had a contact. They were really lost, being a single site rural LEA, and they were just trying to do what they could. And it was making things so much harder when needlessly there's an entire team that can come out and support them and rally against them. And so, but in also doing that, we also found that because of the nature of that area, and with their county superintendent, there were actually 6 other rural LEAs that had the same problem. And so that was an aha moment for me as a leader. Although I'm relatively somewhat new to the department, I had no idea that one of my teams was missing that much data, and we were missing an entire group due to just a break in the system and some things that, we didn't know. And so schools were out there really struggling on a couple of fronts. But I think the other one is also deciding, when we monitor for some of these programs, what should monitoring look like? Because I should never receive feedback that things are oppressive, that things are, to the point where you can't function, or that the feedback that I did receive, we should never receive as a department. And I take that very seriously. And I know that the team does as well. And so I appreciated the LEAs that gave that feedback, because it really has guided me in, we will work alongside, and that is our goal. So anyway, that's a component of to why those pieces are there. And I did have one question. Let me go back and look at the chat. Okay, Rick, so what do you have to do to get a person trained as the McKinney-Vento coordinator? Okay, so that's a really good question. So if you have a McKinney-Vento liaison and coordinator, your liaisons and your coordinators, there's a series of trainings, and it's actually 8 hours worth of trainings that they have to take through our Office of Homeless Education. And so when we identify somebody, this is where you register for them. Some of them are live webinars, some of them are not, but then our team can kind of help through that. But annually, there's a set of training that those staffs need to have. And then there are requirements by law that do state then from that, you do need to do district trainings, just like you need to do your sexual harassment training and all of those things. There are what are called mandated trainings. And so so then those people would then do those trainings, but our team in our trainings help them understand what it is they need to train on, what things they need to put in place, and what does that look like to be an actual liaison and coordinator so that you can run an effective program. But yes, so I can actually, because of that question, Rich, what I'll do is I'll provide the information to Kristin so that she can shoot it out. And then, make sure that everybody on this call and has access to that information. But, this is, I think, the true testament of why we're doing this work now is because these are some of the things that we're uncovering without even realizing that it's an issue. And we won't do that if we're not present.
All right. I want to take this moment again to thank Sharka White for coming and presenting for us today. I am guessing that we can reach out to you if we have any questions that come up after this. And again, I'll have that presentation shared so that you can all get a copy of the presentation, and you'll have her email so that you can reach out. She just put it in the chat there. Thank you. And then for the rest of us, I'm canceling the December one because we had chosen the 4th Tuesday, and that ends up being Christmas Eve morning. And I'm thinking most of you are probably not going to be working. And I don't want to have that on the calendar. So we will meet again in January. And we are going to be going over preparing for your annual audit in January. So I hope you are all excited about your annual audits that are coming up. Again, thank you so much, Sharka, for joining us today. And thank you for everyone that could come and attend. I look forward to seeing you all soon. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and happy holidays if I don't see you until January. Thank you,
guys.